Paris.
Belleville.
Paris, Belleville.
Belleville.
Architecture.
Paris,
Belleville.
Paris, Belleville.
Belleville.
École nationale supérieure d'architecture.
École nationale supérieure d'architecture, Paris-Belleville.
Belleville.
Bienvenue à la troisième et dernière conférence du cycle Les Causeries de novembre de notre école, qui ont lieu grâce à la générosité de la Fondation STO pour l'architecture. Nous accueillons donc ce soir l'un des cofondateurs de l'Atelier Bow-Wow, venu de Tokyo pour nous. Alors, quelques mots rapides d'introduction. Pour justifier ce choix au regard du thème des conférences de cette année, Dessiner, avec le point d'interrogation qui compte beaucoup. Donc cette question de la validité et de la légitimité du rôle, peut-être aujourd'hui du dessin, dans la pratique de l'architecture telle qu'elle a évolué fortement sous la pression des représentations du numérique, a été abordée donc par les deux précédents conférenciers. Et ce soir, il me semblait important de convier Yoshi à venir parler de ce travail, puisqu'on a tous en tête, je crois, ce merveilleux petit livre apparu au début des années 90, Made in Tokyo, dans lequel la métropole de Tokyo était cartographiée dans ses bizarreries, ces bâtiments ordinaires, ces choses que d'habitude les architectes ne regardent jamais, avec un protocole de dessin tout à fait nouveau, particulier, extraordinaire, qui est devenu d'ailleurs aujourd'hui une sorte de standard. Quand ce livre était arrivé, voilà, on était beaucoup à s'être dit qu'il s'inscrivait dans une filiation de toute une théorie, une théorisation de l'architecture à travers ces objets banals, qui le reliait à un certain nombre de livres des années 70 glorieux qui avaient pris une ville pour la regarder à partir de cette banalité. Banham qui regardait Los Angeles avec ses freeways, Venturi bien sûr avec ses enseignes et ses casinos de Las Vegas, Colas avec les promoteurs et les gratte-ciel de Manhattan, et là c'était ces objets très ordinaires de Tokyo qui soudain faisaient l'objet d'une attention et d'une cartographie et d'un dessin particulier. Voilà. Donc la question de savoir si par le dessin, voilà, ce qui a pu émerger comme site de projet et comme typologie, voilà, c'est ça aussi qui est important de dire. J'allais l'oublier, c'est très important, c'est que se mêler à ça dans ce travail, un goût pour la typomorphologie, ou en tout cas la typologie, qui n'est pas étonnant puisque Yoshi a étudié dans cette école pendant 1 an, il y a exactement 30 ans, en 87-88. Donc voilà des influences, voilà, ça mêlé dans ce travail tout à fait singulier qui a continué à nourrir son travail. Donc je pense qu'il va nous parler, je ne sais pas exactement quelle est la manière dont il a organisé sa conférence, et voilà, de la manière dont ce dessin a nourri, en désignant des lieux, en cartographiant des typologies, un certain nombre de ses travaux à Tokyo et même à Paris, puisqu'il a construit, vous le savez, rue Robespierre, un ensemble de logements. Voilà. Merci beaucoup Yoshi d'être venu nous voir. Je vous invite à accueillir chaleureusement Yoshi pour sa conférence.
Doesn't work anymore? Ah, ok. Bonsoir. Merci Françoise de m'introduire. Je m'appelle Yoshiharu Tsukamoto. Je fais mon étude à Paris 1987-88, juste 1 an. Et maintenant, je travaille comme architecte chez Atelier Bow-Wow. Et en même temps, je renseigne à Tokyo Tech, l'Institut de technologie de Tokyo. Et aujourd'hui, le titre de comment ça se dit, conférence, c'est Dessiner. C'est une série de titres de série de conférences. Alors donc, je prépare un peu plusieurs manières de dessiner, de architecture et l'espace urbain dans notre projet, dans notre recherche. Et voilà, c'est la fin de mon français. Alors, so I shift into English. Can I? Okay. Okay. So yes, I hope I speak in French, but since it takes much more time, so I can't finish my slides, my lecture on time. So I'm sorry. I speak in English, but also probably it takes a little bit long, like 1 hour and 15 minutes. So I hope you are enough patient to listen and then give some questions after my talk. Okay. So yes, as Françoise already mentioned, I like to start from 2 books, Made in Tokyo and Pet Architectural Guidebook. And this is a study on city of Tokyo, and especially in the left one, Made in Tokyo is about, it's conceived in Paris. When I came back from Paris, I realized that this kind of study is very interesting. I saw film directed by Wim Wenders, Tokyo Ga, in Centre Pompidou, and through this film I learned how Tokyo is strange. And then it's a film about homage to Ozu from Wim Wenders, on visiting many different colleagues of Ozu to interview them. But at the same time, since he's in Tokyo, traveling around and then meeting many different people, but he can't avoid encountering many strange things in Tokyo. So he also filmed those strange things in Tokyo, and then those 2 documentaries about Ozu and about Tokyo in 1980s are parallelly, how to say, it's parallelly going on. So, and then I realized it's a kind of a, in the manner of road movie, as Wim Wenders developed in his career, but through his eye, Tokyo appeared very fresh and quite exciting. So at that time I was studying under a professor, Henri Chiriani. Some people knows it. Do you still keep on teaching? Françoise, where is Françoise? Oh, okay. Do you still have a UNO system?
He's retired.
No, but do you still have UNO system? Yes? No? Oh. UNO system, yeah. Edith Girard, Henri Chiriani, Boudouin, they all teach in the same method, based on the Corbusier's architecture. So, and then I learned a lot from UNO system, but at the same time, UNO system can't really cover, can't really explain what is actually happening in the city. So I try to step into this kind of chaos of Tokyo as a young scholar, and then. So Made in Tokyo is about hybrid buildings, and then Pet Architecture Guidebook is about extremely tiny buildings in Tokyo. Those are in the form of guidebook, so it's very light and easy to read. But through watching all these examples, there are some certain perspective on the city start to establish in your mind. So I go quickly. So this is super car school. It's a supermarket and car school on the rooftop of it. So there's nothing to do. And then this type of drawing was invented at that time. So it's very, how to say, caricaturized, simple line, with certain depictions, important elements. So we pick them by these lines, explain small things, and then how those are kind of ecology of different things in one physical entity as a building is strange and very surprising. So supermarket and school, the driver's car school it doesn't have any business. No, nothing to do with those. But since in Tokyo the surface is quite the ground surface is quite precious, so this kind of a strange hybrid can happen. This is department store, highway department store. So it's the elevated highway running through Ginza. Ginza is the most, how to say, distinctive, exclusive commercial area, like Champs-Élysées. But we have a highway running through it. So in order to negotiate with this commercial district with highway structure, the ground level and first level under the highway, which is actually byproduct of the production of construction of a highway, are occupied by shops and becomes shopping mall. And then two different, so people on the sidewalk, yes, they are walking 4 kilometers per hour on watching show windows, but on the roof, the car is driving with 100 kilometers per hour. So two different speed how to say, encountering in one building. This is Namakon apartment. Namakon is ready mixed concrete, and then so the left side is the plant of ready mixed concrete, and the right side is apartment for the drivers of a mixer car. So mixer car drivers are waiting for concrete become ready, and then go to construction site and then make building. So this is built in the residential area. It's only industrial allowed industrial facility in the residential area, because ready mixed concrete should be delivered on time anywhere in Tokyo. So, but this is an extreme how to say, adjacency between working and living environment. So live-work environment can appear in this manner also. Yes, it's very silly drawing. Huh? Yes, and then this is a very simple building. It's a warehouse of the paper without any attraction. And then rooftop, it produced huge rooftop as a kind of an empty space. So the owner start tennis court on top of it, on adding very tiny, very small element connecting ground level and the rooftop as the elevator. So this elevator is the only access point for the rooftop for tennis. Yes, this is destroyed. So this document is quite meaningful, and this is golf taxi building. So in Tokyo you can find this kind of envelope made of a net for practicing golf. And then always this envelope produce empty space underneath. This case, taxi company occupies that empty space for parking. And this is called Pachinko Cathedral. Pachinko is a kind of gamble. And then it looks like Notre Dame. Notre-Dame de Paris. So because why I call this Pachinko Cathedral, but actually this is made of, it consists of 3 different buildings. The 2 buildings on both sides are mainly, it's called Pencil Building, and most of the floor are occupied by Shark Bank. You know Shark Bank, you can borrow money, but with very high interest. So and then you can spend money here in the central building for gambling, by gambling. So it's like I imagine that someone who is who has trouble with gambling go to this shark bank to borrow money, and then spend money here and then borrow money here. So this is this kind of a dark side of the urban ecology is also packaged in the form of Notre Dame. So this is the kind of conclusion we withdrew from the observation of those buildings. So at first we tried to establish the typology of those hybrid buildings, but I realized that it's impossible to establish typology, because typology is anyhow a kind of it's achieved by the process of reductions. So you try to find the kind of similarity between different cases, but through comparing those cases you find the kind of similarity within these differences, and then you can establish typology. But those examples are all different, and there is another type of structure which produces this kind of variety and diversity. So I said that I changed my mind, and then realized that it's better to describe in this manner. Like, okay, there are 3 main order to design architecture, to planning architecture. The first is category. So architecture is architecture, or civil engineering is civil engineering. So there are many examples which is a kind of hybrid between architecture and civil engineering structure. But in the case of Made in Tokyo, this kind of category is dissolved, so it's off. And then structure-wise, modern architecture disciplines says that okay, building should have has its own complete and autonomous independent structure. But in many cases, they just borrow existing structure, and then different. The one function is bridging 2-3 different structures. So in this case, structure is also cancelled. Structural order can be also cancelled. So off is introduced, and then use-wise. So, for example, this department store, like super car school, like supermarket. On the rooftop of a supermarket, there is a driving car school. It's almost a nonsense combination. So, use-wise, we can also say that okay, there is no meaningful combination between different programs. So, use can be also off. So if you only allow to match these to fit with this kind of order, if you can only take on side, so there is only one way to solve the problem. So this is a kind of canon of modern architecture, or kind of modernism in a kind of in a very narrow sense. Modernism is wonderful, so I use modernism in a very narrow sense in this case, and then but the Made in Tokyo, the examples of Made in Tokyo all introduce this off moment of these orders, and then so 2 by 2 by 2s, and they have 8 different type of way, 8 different manner to solve the problem. So this is a basic structure which can and can produce so many differences, and diversify the space of Tokyo. And okay, then go to Pet Architecture Guidebook. So this is more funny examples. So this is Brasserie Rouen, which is a one-man brasserie. So it's 1.2 meter wide and then 8 meters long. So there's no corridor space inside of the restaurant. There's only counter, and then one chef do everything. And then in order to go to bathroom, which is that door, you have to go out from the restaurant. And this is Aoyama Real Estate Company, which sells information about real estate, apartment and empty houses, etc. So it starts from 80 centimeter and then 10 meters long. But this long wall works quite well to pin up the information about apartment. Okay, this is bike box in Ikebukuro. So it's an extremely keen shape of triangle shape, and the guy who runs this is bike shop. So he exhibits the bike from 50 cc to 1200 cc, from small to large, according to the depth of the building. And okay, and this is a kind of a mother and kid typology of pet architecture. And then this this is a coffee shop. It's a cafe, and then upper level is the house of the owner of the coffee shop. But since roasting makes a very strong smell, so they make a roasting room separately, and then inside in between space, it's a gap space between buildings, and as an independent facility. And then, in the case of pet architecture, we can actually establish typology, and because it's produced by the transformation of the city, street patterns and urban fabric. So there are four main typologies. One is produced by the enlargement of the street, and then the corner side become very small. And then the second one is a kind of an introduction of two different geometry, like this. So the river and the railway track wants to curve gently, but the street wants to become to be perpendicular. So there is always leftover space between two geometry. And then if new big road is introduced, is planned in the old city fabric, there is always this kind of leftover space along the main street, new street. And then in Japan, building doesn't share the wall with neighbors. We don't have a mur mitoyen. We don't have a mur mitoyen. So there is a chance to insert tiny little building between buildings. So those four are typology. So then I shift into another study called void metabolism, and it's about this nature of Tokyo's urban fabric. So starting from this photo, it's Tokyo in 1945. So just after the bombardment by Allied forces, and so 70% of the surface of Tokyo was burnt out, and then the Japanese government, so our post-war period until '52, when San Francisco agreement was signed up, Japanese government was under the control of Allied forces, so we couldn't make a big urban planning, and we couldn't establish a new big budget for making fireproofing concrete social housing. But so it's quite difficult to manage the reconstruction of the city. So only policy Japanese government could do was asking people to build their own houses by themselves. And then in order to encourage people, Japanese government established the very low interest house mortgage plan, under the condition that the design should be done by architect. So the drawing, if the drawing the design was done by architects and signed with architects, this family can receive this very low interest house mortgage plan. So this really encouraged also architects to be involved in the single family house design. So because why Japanese architects design so many houses, so this kind of tradition, today's very strong tradition, is actually established this process of recovery from World War II. And so city experienced the destruction and the construction, recovery, restructuring. So this transformation, of course, affect on the thought on architects. So in 1960s, a group of Japanese architects who participated into the World Design Congress held in Tokyo manifested concept metabolism. So they borrow the ideas from biology and how the organs and also cells of the life are constantly replacing from old into new one, and they use this metabolism of the life for the metaphor to explain Japanese city. So this is a kind of one of the illustration from biology utilized by Kenzo Tange. And Kenzo Tange actually proposed this plan for Tokyo in 1960, connecting two sides of the Tokyo Bay, bringing the population as much as possible into the central part of Tokyo. And then this is a kind of resource after World War. So this population, demography is a real resources for architects at that moment, because those architects who experienced the war when they were 20 years old, 30 years old, they all believed that Japan became much bigger in terms of territory and get more oils and coals and irons from the continents, but it's all failed. So now there's no resource to think about the new society, but we have we have population. So how to utilize population as resources. And then he designed this kind of plan for Tokyo with borrowing the idea of urban core, which is already discussed in SCIAM, SCIAM, Congrès International Architecture Mondiale, yes. So, and then, so urban core was reinterpreted into the form of vertical core in metabolist, and then then this kind of a core system was fully applied to imagine the new form of the city. So this core is called urban core to receive this accumulating population demographic flux from all over Japan into Tokyo, and then create a kind of a city in the air. This is a kind of a very visionary plan by metabolist. And then other younger architects like Kikutake, Maki, Kurokawa, they all try to propose in the same model of core and capsules around it, and then very few buildings has been built. So this is one of the most monumental buildings from that period. Nagagin Capsule Tower still exists in Tokyo, which clearly shows how architects at that time imagined the urban creation as a tunnel core which receives the flux of the population, and the replaceable capsule, which is a kind of tentative solution for the people to live there. But actually, this building is now very much deteriorated because the sewage pipe is running through the different capsules. So capsule is actually cannot replaceable. If you take one capsule and then you destroy the connection of the sewage pipe. So the same idea of metabolism was also introduced for this type of single-family house. This is Kikutake's his own house, sky house. So it's dedicated for young couple, he and his wife. So it's because why the house has just one room, and then the kids' space should be suspended from this artificial plane, which is supported by concrete wall column. And this also clearly shows the idea of metabolism. But actually, what actually happening after World War II was this kind of phenomena of repetition of houses over the ground of Tokyo. So if this is also metabolism, because all these small grains of houses in the apartment are basically regionalized every 30 years, because the life average of Tokyo is 30 years. But on keeping the void space between buildings, as I mentioned before, there is no idea of mur mitoyen, so there is always a gap between buildings, the void space between buildings. So void is always kept, but the building can be replaced. So in this case, actual void metabolism is a void metabolism. And then the 60s metabolism can be considered as core metabolism. And within this nature of void metabolism, this is the statistics, shows how Tokyo's the life average of Japanese house is short compared to other countries. So the England one has 141 years. So this is a view from the Observatory of Metropolitan Government designed by Kenzo Tange in Shinjuku towards northwest directions, and you can see the repetition of the houses until the foot of the mountain. And this is the actual urban fabric where people are living in. Within this nature of Tokyo, it's not easy to, this is a result of the recovery process from World War II, because government asked people to build their own houses by themselves. Who can build? Who can start doing it? And within this urban fabric, there is many interesting phenomena. One of that is called subdivision. I named it. It's a subdivided suburban. It's I did a study on the first generation of Tokyo Okusawa area, which is now swallowed in the urbanized area, and then we can see many different generations of houses. So this area has been developed started from 1920, so it's already 19 years old. And the average of life average of the house is 30 years. So theoretically, this area have already experienced the regionalization of the building 3 times, theoretically. Now, from now on, all the building, all the houses will be considered, new houses will be considered as 4th generation house. And then why this kind of regionalization is happening, and then why it is so short. It's one of the reasons is there's a very strong policy of inheritance tax to redistribute, in order to redistribute the fortune from one rich family to others. So the inheritance tax is over 50%. And then the price of land went up extremely high during the 1980s, during the bubble economy. So, for example, 250 square meter, which is the initial size of the property of this first generation of suburban development, costed $3 million. And then, if you are a single child who inherit this property from your parents, have to pay half price of this. So you have to pay $1.5 million to receive 250 square meter property. So this is not affordable for normal employee. So many cases, they divide the property into small pieces and sell to pay the tax. So this is a kind of the mechanism which subdivides the property into small pieces, and then result is like this. Because this is all up to the family, so the regeneration is not organized by the municipality, so it's totally up to the individual families. So this is how the property is subdivided into small pieces. Then we can still find the first generation, the original house, which were built in 1920s. Which has a very nice green hedge on the street side, but now garden, and then enough big garden, and then garden has too much grown trees, so house is not seen so much. And then second generation, the property became a little bit smaller, and then from this generation, people start to own the car, so garage is important element, but still people prefer to have greens to create a kind of barrier or kind of a buffer between street. But third generation is like this. In this case, the developer bought this big property and then divided it into 4 pieces and built this kind of decorated shed, like flavor of lemon and flavor of orange and flavor of strawberry and flavor of chocolate, and then this is the history of transformation of single-family detached house in Tokyo. It's all happening in the same area, so you can because why the urban landscape is looks so disordered. Yeah, there's no visual order, but it's because of this timing of regeneration. Because in these 70 years, 19 years, how much Japanese society have been transformed. So the building construction materials-wise, construction materials has been very different now. Has become very different, and then the notion of the family, the size of the family also becomes smaller. It becomes a nuclear family, and then also building law, building code have also changed. So each period, each generation really fix these different conditions as a background of construction of house. So through these, those different generation of a single family house shows different condition of the society from different period. And then, so how should we do as architect? Because we also work a lot for single family house in Tokyo. So, and then in our generation is working on 4th generation. Our generation is working for 4th generation. And then, so I summarize some sort of premises which is shared by the 20th century single family house was too pure for family, too much interiorized by production of a gap space. So I tried to change these premises into the space with non-family members. So and more opportunity to stay outside of the house and redefine the gap space in order to produce more tolerant, generous house. And then one of the example is house and Atelier Bow-Wow, where I'm living and working. So, and then this is another drawing that I like to introduce for you. It's section perspective. So it contains detailed information and perspective information and the surface information and the kind of grains and also behavior of the people. So many different things which can be can be drew before the construction and the behavior actually which is observed, which can be observed after construction. So two different sense of time is overlaid in one drawing. And so we produce a lot this type of drawings for each project, and then the collection of those drawings is titled Graphic Anatomy, and we published 2 volumes until now. So this house has a working space at the bottom, and then living space on top, and then in the middle there is a kind of mixing chamber between working and living, house and Atelier Bow-Wow, built in a very densely built environment, so it's hidden. And then you can enter from the office. This is only one single door for the entrance for this building, so I have to pass through the office in order to go to bed. And then so there is the landing of the stair is much bigger than the normal one. In this case it's occupied by models, and then the living room is fully glazed, and then borrowing the neighbor's exterior wall as our wallpaper. And then we also have this kind of northern balcony where we can enjoy lunch and dinner during good season. And we can also try to bring all the gap space as part of our space. So this is a kind of the way to redefine the gap space. But the most important part is this different sense of membership. So a house was always designed for specifically for one family, which is always very closed. So membership-wise, single family, nuclear family is very closed. And this house is designed with the premise that we have a semi-open membership as family. So our family and my staff are using same building, and actually building is utilized for 24 hours. Another study was about Machiya. Machiya is townhouse. Very sophisticated old typology for residents, but live and work together. If you go to Kyoto, Kanazawa, old city, you can see this the streetscape which is kind of produced by the repetition of Machiya typology. And then I established 5 different principles of Machiya, like 5 principles of modern architecture by Le Corbusier. And then, this is one of the very beautiful streets which still have very original condition of Machiya typology. So it's very beautifully harmonized, coordinated. But actually, in the city of Kanazawa, this study was about Kanazawa. There are many adaptations of old typology into quotidian conditions. So from top to the bottom, it becomes a little bit, the top left one, it's the oldest case of Machiya in Kanazawa, very low second story, and And the second one is also, but the third one, we call this mask machiya. It has a brick tile facade in order to hide the old appearance of the machiya, because this was barber. So barber tried to be modern. And so there are, for example, added eave is a very important element to divide, which is added in the middle of the facade. And then the top right one, the added eave is replaced by plastic canopy in order to have more space for store. And then sky machiya is kind of scraping the ground level for car parking. So car parking, it's the biggest problem for machiya. People in 20th century underestimate machiya because it is designed, it's established when car didn't exist. So it's very difficult to find the car parking. So, and then it's long and narrow and long with several courtyards in the middle. So they found it's cold and dark. So they prefer to make a modern house, but so it's underestimated. So because why this kind of modification happened, but actually this modification is quite lovely. So I really like those adaptations by people, not by architects, because they express anyhow the strong affection and try to make connection to their own typology of the city, machiya. And then I apply this principle of machiya in one of the houses designed in Tokyo, because the subdivision of property produce very narrow and deep property now. So this is split machiya, 29 meters wide, 13 meters long. And then the house, it's a small house, it's only 58 square meters. I divided it into two, 29, 3 stories high, to 29 square meters for 2 stories high. And then this has with kitchen, without bath, and then this has bathroom without kitchen. So 2 houses work together as one house, together with this courtyard in the middle. This is also from graphic anatomy. Yeah. So, and then there is a very interesting side penetration from front side to the back side, deep side of the building in machiya. So I apply same principle in this house. So there are five walls, sequential wall, 5 walls, but the position of the window on the upper level is always the same, so you can see through the house. Yeah, okay, like this. And then another project, another type of graphic is public drawing, and the first public drawing we've done is this. It's for in order to calm down our soul after the big earthquake in Tohoku 2011. So I and my students were really nervous because we couldn't do anything for the people who experienced this devastation. So we couldn't go there because the road was cut and the gasoline is was not enough even for the devastated area. So we can't go without without having a strong purpose. So we start to draw in order to calm down ourselves by imagining the kind of new city in this tsunami region, on borrowing the many different typology from World Heritage Site, because the tsunami was said it's once the size of the tsunami was once 1,000 years. So it means modern architecture doesn't make sense. So I try to apply the kind of photo-less type of building or bridge type of building, which lasts already 300 years, 400 years on the planet, and then learn from them, and then apply their vocabulary and typology to reconstruct the area of tsunami. So it's not, it's not serious planning, but I think idea-wise it's quite interesting. So each small, how to say, community has its own castle, and then the roof is fully covered by photovoltaic panel, which produce energy for them. And then these castles are connected by the bridge, or like the one in Firenze, Ponte Vecchio. Yeah, so Ponte Vecchio is a living bridge. So the shopping street is integrated into bridge. So we draw by pencils and on chatting. It was very nice to calm our soul. And then we had a chance to exhibit these drawings in the modern art museum in Tokyo. And so the original one is the one above the monitor, and then we magnified these drawings into 8 times bigger, but they're only drawn by pencils with 20 people together. So one is taking care of just the waves on the sea, one is taking care of just the stones, and then one is taking care of the pine trees, one is taking care of the photovoltaic panels. So it's like city. So people who work for photovoltaic panel, they don't plant pine trees in the garden. So it's like a kind of a collective of different professions to make a city. So we give different roles to different drawer people to work together. So this is the idea of public drawings. And so in that sense, this drawing has no authorship. It's a copyright free. And then it's so this is it's a kind of a, by chance I discovered that, okay, from now on I think the architectural design can be based on the authorship into based on the membership. So membership, as I explained in the last volume metabolism section, alternative membership becomes very important ideas. So we worked for a devastated area and experienced the recovery process. And it also gives us very good, hint to understand how Tokyo has been recovered from the World War II. So the process was totally different. So in the case of World War II, government asked people to make their own houses. But in this case, government tried to control everything by themselves. And then we visited there and then started asking questions because all the villages are already destroyed, so we can't really guess the life on the lifestyle of the people. Most of them are fishermen. From the village village form. So we hear the voices of the people with many questions and answers. So this process was ethnographical. We were like ethnographer rather than architects. So because we are volunteer to help the recovery process, because fishermen are asked from city administration to decide where they want to build new residential quarter on top of the hill, and which is fully subsidized by the central government. But they don't know how to decide. So we go there and help them to read the topography and the direction of the wind and the view to the port, etc., and connection with the street. So all these things are summarized synthesized to decide the best position in the village. So we drew these very simple pencil drawings to show the candidate site for the new residential area on top of the hill, but same time the new plan for the reconstruction of the port area. And then we continue this type of work together with fishermen, and then we become good friends. And we also proposed the core house project. Core house is a tiny little house. You can build it with like $70,000. So it's a very small house, but totally fits to the fishermen's lifestyles. And then they can put more space after that. So in order to encourage fishermen to come back to their hometown, home village, we also proposed this kind of house. And through this experience, we gradually realized that the importance is not only fishing, but also maintenance of the mountain. Because so this is a view from 1960s. And there is a mountain behind with cedar trees and bamboo forest. And then the big roof is a house for the kind of old family who installed this village. And then the small houses in front of the sea is a relatively newcomer. A kind of a new family who come here, and then other small sheds are working kind of a shed for working space for or storage for the fishermen. And so this, and then we start to draw this kind of valley section around, like Patrick Geddes. So this valley section shows how the life of the fishermen connects the water, the ocean, and mountains. So they have graves and temple on top of the mountain, and then they plant the cedar trees between temple and charcoal burning shed, and then kind of broad leaf trees for taking firewood. And then they can also crop the mushrooms and the wild vegetables. And then they have houses, and then they have a street, and then they have a new family's streets of house, and the working sheds and water. So this valley section shows the network of things which produce this, which exists behind this beautiful fisherman's village landscape. But actually, what government is proposing now is this kind of section. This is another, this is a valley section given from the government. So sea dike to stop another big tsunami, which might happen in 100 years. And then lower level, in both cases, lower level is prohibited to build a house. And then upper level of the village is dedicated for housing. And then what is actually happening now? It's already occupied by new houses. But all those houses are actually provided by the big company from Tokyo, Osaka, big cities. So industrialized houses, which is very different from this one. In this case, houses were built with local timbers and local carpenters. So the construction network, the network behind the house was totally regional and local. But now the network behind the house is replaced by the industrial network. I think that this is really serious because it will become probably identity crisis in 50 years. because this is a landscape of Tokyo suburbia. This is from the very famous book Tokyo Suburbia of Takashi Honma, photographer. It's a view of Tokyo suburbia, and then exactly same with this Tohoku fisherman's village. And I think it's really serious. So government says, okay, this is a recovery because we fulfill the number of houses, but actually by replacing the network behind it. So locality was totally banned and killed and disappeared from construction culture of this region. So we are very much interested in this, following this kind of network behind things, behind objects. Very much inspired by Bruno Latour, actor network theory. And then we continue working for Fisherman's Village. And especially Momo, my partner, is now working as a director of a fisherman's school in order to get a newcomer, new blood, young people who wants to start fishing. The fishermen decided to start fisherman's school together with Momoyo, my partner, architect. And then she runs the school. She's also teaching in the another university which I teach. So with her students, she organized a program, and then it's a school, but there's no institutional program. It's just a kind of intensive workshop of fisherman's life. So teachers are fishermen. They teach how to work with rope, how to fish from the boat, how to cook, etc. And then we also made a textbook for this school. And this is first time in Japan, because the knowledge and the skills of fishing are just handed from the previous generation to next generation, from father to son. So they don't need to have a textbook. And we continue a series of fisherman school, and then realize that this valley section connecting water and mountain, and then one school version was about mountain area, and bring fishermen to the mountain, and then teach how to manage, how to enjoy, how to play with mountain. And then Momoyo did this valley section again to illustrate the connection between mountainside and water side. So this is a series of valley sections through times. And then, so for example, it's very interesting because this part, which used to be cedar forest, turned once in 1930s into rice farm and vegetable farm. It was the most populated period in this village. And then from 1960s, this farmland was transformed into cedar forest, because the government encouraged people to stop make rice, and then encouraged to plant cedar trees to produce more timber for construction. And then now in 2011, those area is now transformed into the new residential area. But this new residential area, government only produced a new site for the family who used to live in this village. So there is no place for the people who come newly from outside of the village to become new fishermen. So we are trying to solve this problem to cut some forest to create a kind of open space, and then it becomes a Momonora village. Yes, we cut cedar trees and then create open space, but this used to be farmland, so it's stepping up. Yes, there is already stone walls which create terraces. So we work together with young architects, and they designed this kind of small cottage and built together with students. It's also part of a fisherman's school. And then we designed this main building. It's also a very cheap, sober building. And then we draw this, again. Okay. You can stay here actually. And then this is a kind of a facility to learn the skills of how to fish, how to work in the mountain. So this kind of skills to access to the local resources is a program of this facility. So if you bring, yes, professor, if you bring students to Tokyo, to Japan, please stay here. We can ask fishermen to bring you for fishing from 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay. So this house, main house, is also reinterpretation of a traditional fisherman's house. And then we also, this halfway broken stone wall is now refurbished as another program of the Momonora village. So we do all these things by ourselves on learning from the specialist. And we also again start kind of ancestor festival during the August. They stopped doing it for 40 years, but since the village becomes again quite vibrant, so they want to start again. Yeah, we help to do it. Okay, so with this kind of experience, our interest is very much in the farming area and mountain area. But before going to that, I have another project about this. But let's go back to the city. And this is a book published in 2015 about commonalities, how architectural design can be based on commonalities rather than individuality and authorships. And one of the chapters investigates how the public open space in the city in different countries are appropriated by the behavior of the people. So this is an example from Copenhagen. The bridge is called Dronning Rees Bridge, and then the sidewalk is occupied, appropriated by the people, enjoying the sunset until the last moment. And this photo is taken in September, so it's a little bit chilly. So if you see the people on the bike, they are all already wearing a jacket and coats. But the people on the sidewalk, they are almost looks like summer. And because they can also enjoy the heat radiating from the stone balustrade. So stone balustrade absorb the heat from the sun in the afternoon, and then now absorbing it, radiating it onto the back of the people. And then they enjoy drink beer and playing music, playing guitar, and watching the people walking on the sidewalk and the street with the sunset. So there is a very interesting synthesis of two different types of behavior. One is behavior of heat from the stone, and then the other is human behavior, who sit on the sidewalk and leaning on it. So this synthesis of different behavior is actually a kind of emergence of architectural intelligence. I'm very interested in this kind of phenomena. So this is another drawing of my campus, the Tokyo Tech campus, is appropriated by the people who enjoy hanami. Hanami is appreciation of a cherry blossom. So these are people who are not members of the university. They are from neighborhood, and but school didn't ask them to come, but they naturally come together with their meals and drink. So this everyday rhythm of eating and drink meet together with the annual rhythm of cherry blossoming. So cherry blossom once a year, so it's a rhythm of 1 year, and then every rhythm of eating and drinking overlay, encounter in one place. And then this is a moment, this is a way to celebrate the arrival of spring for Japanese people, by Japanese people. And Japanese people actually, we Japanese actually trained ourselves almost 700 years to behave in this manner. So I also sometimes see cherry trees in the foreign park, but they are planted alone with this kind of accumulation. But I recently heard in Paris, people start enjoying hanami, right? Oh, no reaction. So this drawing is actually, it's not about the space, the physical the composition of the space, but it shows the ecology of different things. It's also another way to describe the network of things. And this kind of investigation can be applied for the project, like Canal Swimmers Club in 2015 in Bruges. We were invited as, we also drew like this. It's a kind of tentative facility floating on the canal to encourage people to jump into the water, which prohibited for 40 years because of the pollution of water. Until 1976, people enjoyed swimming in the city, in the canal, but from 1977, city prohibited because of the pollution. But now water quality is improved, and then at the time of this art triennale, Bruges triennale, city wants to start again encouraging people to swim in the canal, because the city is fully occupied by tourists. They have 100,000 inhabitants as citizens, and then they receive 5 million tourists every year. So the public space, the main square, and are fully occupied by tourists, and then cafes becomes very expensive. So the citizens, the people living in Bruges, feel a little bit suffocated because they lost their own public space. So this water surface is kind of a potential public space for the people. But there is a barrier, mind barrier, among people, because for a long time it is prohibited to swim. So if you swim alone, you are recognized as a crazy person. He's swimming in the canal, which is dirty, but actually water quality is good. So if 100 people swimming together, people recognize that this is part of the culture of Bruges. So I designed this floating pavilion to encourage people to jump into the water. But May 20 was the opening. It's too early. Temperature was 11 degrees, so no one jumped into the water. So this is in June, but then May 20, I decided to jump into the water together with my colleagues, the local architects. So they are the staff of local architects, and then we jump into the water. Yes. This is August 1st. So mainly, there are many different types of people, tourists and citizens. And then I see many beautiful scenes that grandfather teach swimming, grandfather teach grandson how to swim, because 40 years ago, who swam in the canal, they were teenagers, so they are still late 50s. So and then some of them have grandson, granddaughter. So they bring grandson, granddaughter, and then swim together. So it's a very beautiful learning and teaching environment. And I think this learning and teaching condition environment is one of the very important quality of public space, good public space. Yeah. And then, yes, oh yeah, this is a kind of section of public drawing, so how it looks like. So public drawings, and then if you, if you focus on, it says there are many details of the behavior. Maybe it's too much. Okay, I think I don't have time to talk everything now. So yeah, this is drawings of BMW Guggenheim in New York as through the public drawings, but the same project can be illustrated in the manner of graphic anatomy, section perspective. This is not actually a section, this is a section with details and special quality. Yeah. Okay, I think I don't have time. Okay, maybe this is, can I give two more examples? So another graphic expression is developed, has been developed through the window study. Window behaviorology is a 10 years long study in my laboratory at Tokyo Tech. So we travel a lot to collecting different type of windows, and then we always sketch and then measure and take photos from inside and outside, and then interview them, interview the inhabitants, and then make this kind of drawings with measurement, and then also always put the title as a concept of this window. This is a window to pull the light within this very thick wall, and this is a window for seating. This is Mashuavia from Turkish house. In Turkey, the woman for a long time, not now, but it used, the woman used to be prohibited to show their faces to the public. So also the window has also some sort of screen in front of it. And then this is from Procida, Italy, the fisherman's house. So this big arch is the window for the husband who work on the boat, and then this big opening and color is recognizable signs for them to find their house, and then small windows is for daily life. So two different sizes of window are overlaid on one facade. So we call this window in the window. And then this is from Jaipur in India, from Hawa Mahal, the Palace of Wind. So 7 centimeter thick stone wall carved into this way, produce micro shadow within it, and produce kind of a micro climate within this 7 centimeter. It's amazing. So this stone screen produces breeze on cutting the radiation from outside. And this is a hotel Sirenese in Positano, a very beautiful scenery. Yeah, the sky and water with horizon, and the hills occupied by houses almost rushing into the water, but received by the cupola of a church. Beautiful. And then it's also repeat. Window also have its own behavior as collective. So this idea can be applied in the housing project in Paris, Rue Rivière. And this is a kind of the graphic I found in the internet about the Parisian apartment building, and I really like it because this repetition of a French window, which is very redundant. We can say I'm living in this window. But we can also say, I'm living with these 3 windows on the same level. We can also say, I'm living with 4 windows on two different levels. And we can also say, I'm living with this studio window with a more conventional window next to it. So I think behind this repetition of French windows, any kind of information is possible. And then this is a project Porte Pochet. So 140 housing built in 1960s was destroyed, and then tried to find a new place in the neighborhood at the same amount of housing, a little bit plus alpha. And then this blue tower is renovated by Lagaton Vassal. So this is the site, original site, just next to the Cimetière de Batignolles. And this is a comparison between modern application of a structural unit for housing. So this is housing in Shibuya, in Tokyo. So in one structural unit, there are 2 family units. It's clear. No? You can see how many families are living inside. And then, okay. And then, but here, we don't know how many families are living here in this building, because there is only repetition of windows. I think it's more interesting. So we designed the house like this. The central part is a very, just a stacking of 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms, and then creating a kind of open space against the neighbor's property. And then this is a place where we can insert single family, almost the small detached house along the street of housing of Paris Habitat. So this is a plan. So this house has 6 windows, and then this small house has also 5 windows. This 2 bedrooms has 5 windows. And in total, this central building has 18 housing units with 108 windows. But we don't know where is the family unit, because we also mystify the family unit by giving different size and proportion on balconies, and then it's random disposition. So this is a kind of a result, which is before occupied by the inhabitants. Now all these balconies, we imagine this kind of vertical neighborhood, a kind of communicative facade between different house units. Nowadays, those balconies are quite pretty, occupied by flowers, because there is one old lady who is very good at raising and keeping the flowers. So she was invited by many different house units to make the flower garden in the balcony. Yes. Okay, let's go. And then another project in Berlin, it's a different place, but this project is very much focused on windows. It's focused on the Marshall Via. It's kind of this type of window. This is a building we designed. All the opening is covered by this screen, wooden screen. So, but with a random disposition, which is something different from the traditional one. So why it is stepping up? Because behind the wall facade, there is a staircase going up, and then the landing is a place for reading books, and then the exterior wall is fully this is for the traditional physical books, and then in the middle of the house there is a big table cladded with aluminum panel, serves for digital library. Now there is no computer here, but now there is computers are installed. yeah, and then rooftop. So the last graphic is this one, actor network. So we are trying to show our interest in actor network by drawing, but it's very difficult. It's quite difficult to draw actor network, but this is one of the better one, which explains Koisubuta laboratory plus Kurimoto Daiichi firewood supply station. Probably you don't understand anything. And then it's a project to produce job for disabled people in the farming area on utilizing the unmanaged cedar trees in the region, connecting different actors from the big company, from the urban residents and the farmers and then also woods and forest workers and almost how to say sweeping timber mill in the area. And yes, so the area is like this. So the lower level, there is many valleys running into the landscape like this, and it's utilized for the rice paddy. And then on top of the hill, there is another type of farm for vegetables. And then between two, there is slope which is covered by cedar trees, which is planted in 1960s, as I explained. And then the first project is Koisubuta laboratory. Koisubuta means pork in love. Strange name, but it's a brand name of the pork. And then this NGO who runs a social welfare program like daycare center, elderly homes, the chairman of this NGO is actually pork farm. He's running a pork farm. So, but he didn't utilize this. He just produced pork, pig, and he didn't process this meat and then make a kind of a product like ham and sausage. So he decided to utilize this pork for producing the job for disabled people. And and then in order to design this building, we learn from Palladium Villa. I don't have time, so let's go. So it's like this, like Palladium Villa with long colonnades in front, to make to show the building much larger than the reality, like Palladium did. This is the first time. Yeah, Palladium Villa was a new invention by Palladio or the architect in that period to bring aristocrats or merchants from the city into the farming area. So this is the first time urban citizens and farming culture encounter, and then they need certain typology to convince them to stay in the farming area. So Palladio introduced the Greek style temple for designing the house for the aristocrat or the merchant from Venice. And then, so I think this program is also urban-rural exchange program. So the program tried to attract people from the city to spend some time here and then support the life of disabled people living in this farming region. So I think it fits very well, this villa typology, because villa typology belongs to farming culture rather than traffic culture. The upper one is a road station, which is very popular now, but it always appears like invasion of farming culture by car culture, mobilization. So we try to set the parking as hidden as possible, and behind the mound, which is produced by the excavation of the foundation. and then keep the landscape open in front of the building. And it looks like this, yeah, okay. And then, yeah. So this is upper level is a shabu restaurant of pork. Downstairs is a factory for ham and sausage. It's subdivided into small rooms. So the people like auntie, yeah, auntie, some mental disease, with mental disease, they sometimes perform very well in a very concentrated condition. So this kind of factory works quite well. And then the upper level is surrounded by ribbon window, almost 360 degrees. You can see the cedar trees surrounding the property. And then, but these cedar trees are unmanaged. This is a kind of a typical problem of Japan nowadays. We have, our country is covered, 70% of our land is covered by forest, but many of the cedar trees, cedar forests are unmanaged because we lost the game against in the global market. And then after 1984, after Plaza Agreement, the Japanese timber industry couldn't compete against North American timber industry. So the forest is unmanaged like this. This is another barrier produced by it's a barrier produced by the market between people and local resources. And it's the same problem like the recovery process of Tohoku. Yeah, but then this NGO start to maintain this unmanaged cedar forest, because their policy is the care is very creative. And they start from caring from people, and then caring the space. They clean very well the building. Every day they clean up the building. And then gradually their interests go towards the landscape of the area. And then they start thinning trees and then producing fire log. And then many people start to ask them to please sell these firewood, because this building was completed in 2012, 1 year after the big earthquake of Tohoku. And then this big earthquake of Tohoku also accompanied with the explosion of a nuclear power plant, Fukushima Daiichi power plant. So many people start very conscious about diversifying the energy resources. And then log stove became very popular, because they can heat the building with electricity. So, but the fire log is quite difficult to get, to buy in the city area. So this facility was discovered by those people, which is available to buy fire log. Then this NGO group were very smart. They thought it could be another business to produce jobs for disabled people. So we start working together from the beginning, and then connecting finding the timber milling factory and meeting farmers, forest workers. And then this is a splitter machine, which is introduced by this NGO as barrier-free device. I was very surprised, because barrier-free in architectural school is making a ramp, installing an elevator to connect different levels for wheelchair, but actually barrier is everywhere in the society. And then the guy says, the NGO says, this is a device to lower the barrier for disabled people to participate in the forest industry, forest working, forest management. So I made this diagram to explain, to dissect the process of thinning and making firewood from the beginning to the end, and then find some processes available for disabled people, and then make manuals like this, with photos and very easy, simple descriptions. And this is also barrier-free device for disabled people. And then the design of the building should be strongly related to the local timbers, because this facility is to create better accessibility to local resources. So we insist on using this trunk as a column of the building. And so actually the building materials all came from the adjacent forest. So the right one is Causeries laboratory, it's a ham and sausage factory. And the new one, firewood factory, is this one. Yes, again, yes. So you see this, yes, all the columns, the main columns are this round, the log column. And we also designed the roof, which is available for the local cedar tree to be part of this project. Most of the case, cedar tree is not strong enough for constructing the roof. So many case imported timber like American pine is utilized for the roof construction. But in this case, we design carefully this roof structure to invite local cedar trees as a member of this building. So this is a view from above. And then this farm between buildings is a sweet potato farm. It's also utilized for care farm. Disabled people also can work here. So the building is like this. And then this gasifier log boiler produce all the hot water for this facility. So this is a sweet potato produced and selling in this small shed. So in the first building, Causeries, we apply the typology of a villa. And then in this case, we apply the barn typology and the storage building for the farmhouse. So now we can see very mixed membership. The people from the city, people from the regions are sharing the same moment in this campus. So I think this is the last diagram which wrap up my discussion. So yes, through the experience of the recovery process, we met the fishermen and then realized that they are almost still living in the ethnographical network with very direct accessibility to resources. But we are now living most of us who are living in the city is surrounded by industrial society network. And the 20th century was a project to bring people from ethnographical network into industrial society network. But now I think this industrial society network actually produce many barriers in the society in terms of accessibility to the local resources. So now I think architectural design can find these various barriers in the society and resolve it, and then create better accessibility to local resources, and to bring people back to this hybrid zone between an ethnographical network and an industrial society network. It's a 20th century and 21st century project. Thank you very much. I can keep it. Yeah? Oh, thank you for your patience. Yeah, for your patience. Yeah. Oh,
thank you, Yoshi, for your very stimulating and complete lecture.
yeah.
Before perhaps I let people who want to leave the room do so. nous avons. Je vous la passe après. Je vais poser la première question. Je vous la passe tout de suite. Je vous passe tout de suite. Well, while people are leaving, I just wanted to ask you something, and before I pass the mic.
No, it's fine.
It's fine?
Yes, please leave. But I want several questions to answer, because I came from far, so without having conversation,
So
I don't feel very bad. I don't feel good. You should really host me by giving some questions. This is really the manner to make your school better. Please don't forget it. Yeah? School is made by students. It's not by professors. So if you don't give any questions, you give up to make your school better. So please do that. No?
So perhaps can I start the round of questions with one which I have, and then I will pass the mic around.
No, it's better to start from the students.
Well, there is something here.
Okay, so basically it's a bit difficult because it has to do with the core of design. So when you talk about analysis, how does this analysis of factors like structure, site, moral actually apply to your architecture? Because you said that you actually did the whole analysis of building in Japan, but and then you actually built on in Japan buildings that actually stay there and do work for it. So how does this analysis actually apply to the architecture you afterwards made in Japan? And talking specifically afterwards, were these factors actually the factors or the consequences of the architectural design? I don't know if you get what I mean. Okay, first, how does the analysis apply to the architecture? Because we saw different designs of building and from the ones that they are in Japan. So was it actually reversing the reality of staying in the reality of Japan? Many questions.
What is your question? How can I apply
the analysis into your how does this analysis that you actually concealed apply to your actual design?
So there are two aspects in the study, in the analysis. The one is for designing the project.
Yes.
So now we are becoming more and more. Our interest is becoming larger and larger. Not only architectural typology, but now we are very much interested in this actor network, which is behind the actual landscape or actual objects, and then also we are interested in this transformation or genealogical change of actor network in our society through industrialization, blah blah blah, and then. In many cases, especially working in the farming area, architecture is not actually welcomed. So in city, you have site, and this site is not prepared for farming. It's prepared for construction, so ready to be built. But in the farming area, the land is basically for production. For the lives, many different type of lives. Although it is abundant, new weeds sprouting up, and then some birds bring seeds of the trees, and then it will become forest again in few years. So the land is not dedicated for construction. So this is very interesting for me to work in the farming area, fishing area, because there's no prepared space for construction. So, but there are room to propose something from architectural point of view, which is a kind of a missing piece in order to make a better, sustainable network of things, in order to maintain this landscape in a more productive and more happier way, more peaceful way. And then, so the architecture project is becoming not only occupying certain site by physical volume, it becomes finding this missing piece and then create, propose something to make a connection between different things and then create better network. So I can say in the city we build architecture on site, but in the farming area we should make architecture in the network. So site disappear and network becomes more important to propose something. So this is the aspect of designing the project. Within this, also within this process, there is some architectural element or some spatial element or materials which play a very important role within this actor network. And then architectural design itself can start from playing with those things. This is what I'm always doing. So there are two different levels: designing project, designing architecture. So is it okay? Hi. Oh, good school.
Hello.
Hello.
So I actually have like 3 questions emerging from one question, kind of.
Yeah, please. One each.
It's about the behaviorology that you've talked about.
Yes.
I was really interested and impressed, actually. So as I understood you talked about the history and culture, the actual situation of the place you're making your project, and some sort of typologies and time of the day, time of the year, and materials and their behaviors, actually. So many parameters, apparently, and while we superimpose all of them, the form of the new kind of behavior or new kind of architecture that you are proposing, how does this process work, actually? I didn't quite understand. And from that on, the other thing that I was asking to myself, I saw all these amazing drawings, like the behavior of people, but also the technical details, like numbers and such. Are there any other forms of representation or producing architecture that you do in your office, like, I don't know, models or whatever? Because I saw, like, there was this image of like 5-6 people drawing a drawing, like, at the same time. How does it work? Like, who decides what to do, or everyone's doing something and you kind of...
okay.
How does it work in the office? I'm also curious about that.
All those drawings are not, how to say, technical drawings or practical drawings. So we also produce plans and sections and...
No. That's not the question. The thing was like the superposition of behavior on the technical side of the building.
Yes.
Like this process, how does it work? How do you come up with these drawings at the end?
How?
Coming back to the behavior at first, like.
No, okay. Behavior is something embedded in your body, but it's triggered. It's active. It becomes active when something, some trigger was found by this body itself. So, for example, in the case of small houses, the dimension of elements is very important. For example, we often design the window with a little bit larger window sill at 36 centimeters or 42 centimeters from the floor level, and then this is actually windowsill, but same time you can sit on. It can be bench, and then you can I can't sit on it, but you can sit, and then you can bring your half of your body from outside of the wall, and then you can enjoy this threshold between outside and inside through the window. So, for example, this kind of behavior is very much afforded by the dimension, the scales of elements. So we are in the drawings of this graphic anatomy, by giving the details and the perspective, but at the same time I like to show this sense of dimensions, which is very close to the behavior of the body. And yeah, this is just one example, but there are many examples. For example, how to make friendly staircase. So the height of the eye of adult is 1.5 meters in average. So if you design the landing a little bit lower than 1.5 meter high from the lower level, from where you are standing, and then you can see the surface of the landing, and then it becomes very friendly. But so if you give 10 meters more for the landing, and then this staircase appears like a wall in front of you, and then it's not, it becomes an enemy. It's not friendly anymore. So there are many critical dimensions in architectural design which change the notion of the elements, the meaning of the elements. So because we like to draw those behavior together with architectural details.
My other question was, I'm so sorry. Is there any other forms of representation?
Oh yeah. We often make
specific like this,
model,
right?
Yeah, every project is examined by most of the case 1 to 20 scale model with materiality and the details, and then it's really easy to grasp what is actually happening in the space. Because it's very important to understand the problem you yourself produce by proposing something. So you propose something, it's a kind of a production of problem. You also you can respond some request, and then you solve some problem, but at the same time you produce another problem. But the making a big model is a very important means to find these problems. And then on feeding, this is an important feedback moment. What you do, and then what you receive. And then you receive it, and then solve this new problem which you produce back to the reality, and then to the design. This process really train your design and make it much better and stronger. Hi.
Hello. I just wanted to know, to ask you, how do you use the tool, the section perspective in your work? Like, do you use it as a tool for the project in an early stage, or do you use it as a render after the project is done, or do you use it all along your project?
Normally, we produce these drawings when the project is finished. But it's a very important process to feedback what we've done, and then learning from what we've done. I think an architect is a very good job, good profession, because you can experience from the whole process, from the emerging of the ideas or the emerging of the project, and then the emerging of idea to make it materializing it, and then doing the drawings, and then experience construction, and then people start using it, and then there are many problems, and then they always complain us, and then but this whole process is only architects who can experience it. So, for example, carpenter is very important in construction, but they are not experienced the whole process of production of architecture. They are in charge of very limited part of construction process, or the process of making architecture. And so I think the feedback is one of the most important aspects of architects. And then you also have a chance to write about your project. You make a description to convince client at the beginning of the project, but at the end of the project, you also have a chance to make another type of description. And then this another type of description is actually preparing another step. You go forward, and it's a kind of yes.
Hi.
Hi.
So I had two questions. So I'm going to continue with the question about architect responsibility. On the beginning of your lecture, you were talking about the responsibility of architects during the reconstruction of Tokyo. And so I was questioning myself, like, how is the situation really about architects, because so I've been to Tokyo, and half of 80% of the production of housing is like massive production housing, and so I wanted to know if is it really architects, or like how do you define yourself as architects compared to what is produced by 80% of like the industrial question? And the other question is about commonality. Isn't your own vocabulary, no?
Commonalities?
Like commonality, is you create the word, no?
It's English commonality.
Okay.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask what is the distinction between commonality and commons?
Commons and commonality?
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Okay, for the first questions, how I myself see, how I understand myself. Nowadays, I'm very interested in writing modern epic. You know epic? The ancient story of the nations and the tribes and ethnic and etc. And actually, epic is something to create a kind of a huge time difference. Produce a huge distance in time scale where you are living, and then what was there, what happened in the past and the beginning of this of the world, etc. So this is a kind of the story is dedicated to create this extremely long time scale, which is I think it's something a kind of means to resist forgetting things. So if we see epic as the means against, or which resisting against forgetting, I think 20th century is totally century of forgetting, because the development of technology transforms our livelihood so rapidly, so we don't know where we are and how we are living. And we don't know where these materials come from, for example. All these things is forgotten. And then we are trained to be, as a human being, new type of human beings who doesn't care about those kind of things. But I think it's quite important to remind those why this is here, why this shapes like this. I think it's the same idea of same criticism raised by Bruno Latour, and then I think architectural design can actually play a role of the poet of epic story. So today I talk about how the reconstruction of the city of Tokyo after World War II happened and was driven. No one, I think people don't care about this. They just think about how to make a better house, how to make a beautiful house, how to earn money to reach these kind of houses. People are interested in this, but this is all based on constructed on the fact that the city of Tokyo is reconstructed in that manner. So I'm more interested in bringing people back into this kind of evidence or fact where we are standing on, rather than just providing pretty architecture. Pretty architecture is also. I appreciate pretty architecture, beautiful architecture, but I myself is very interested in to play as a kind of epic writer. Yeah. This is different from others. And then the second question, what's the difference between commons and the commonalities? Yes, commons, yes, it could be commons. I think it's another. The commonality is another way to describe commons. But if we speak about commons, people often think about territory or kind of farming or forest or the land which is shared by community members. This is commons. But if we apply in the city, because the commonalities book is about public space in the city, so most of people believe that this is public space. If I just say commons, it makes a confusion. So because why I use the word commonalities rather than commons, and then commonalities is something that belongs to the people's behavior, and then also architectural typologies, architectural languages, and so on and so on. So it can be something not fixed on the ground. If you say commons, it's more rooted to the ground. So, and this is my distinction.
Thanks.
Oh, so he's always.
Hi. Yes, I have two questions. They're not actually related, but the first one is related to your section perspectives.
Yes.
I really like the one of the cherry blossoms. There's materials, there's the behavior, there's a lot of information, but you specifically wanted to focus on the behavior of the people. So one of my question is, there was that text coming out of like pointing out of the people. Was that describing what the people were doing, the activity? What was it really? Because it was in another language that I don't speak, so. And the second, I can ask you the second question after, because it's not related.
This description?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like made in Tokyo, so we just describe simple things. Like, yeah, it's not so important.
Yeah, okay. So it's like they're like eating or...
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So the other question is, of the project in this town that had a tsunami, and like I saw the section that you actually had this natural barrier, and then this green area. After that you had this freeway for the vehicles, then another green area, and then public transport, and after that is the town. What's the distance between the town and the border of the sea?
It depends. If the highland, the hillside is discovered in the very close to the coastline, just 50 meters.
50 meters.
Yeah, but sometimes it can be 150 meters.
Okay.
Yeah.
It depends. All right. Thanks.
Just a very quick question. Thank you for this very broad survey of your work. I'm struck by the continuities you have. For example, just to look at the word hybrid, you began with saying you were very interested to look at Tokyo through its hybrid buildings, and you evoke that again in your last project that you show. But you evoked a lot of sources like, film, for example, for the Tokyo project, or Bruno Latour. But could you evoke more of your sources of inspiration in terms of drawing? Because it seems your drawings are also very hybrid. For example, your first Made in Tokyo is the kind of hybrid between a kind of guidebook and a manual, the way you target things, and even the drawing that you enlarge becomes like a map and something in between. So could you talk about how you design your drawings?
Yeah, the Made in Tokyo, this isometric axonometric was very much inspired by Stephen Hall's the series of studies on farming houses and alphabetical houses, buildings, and so on and so on. The pamphlet architecture. You know the series of pamphlet architecture. Stephen Hall wrote 2-3 books, and then one of that is rural houses, and the shotgun house is drawn by the Cavalier type of axonometric, and we are very much influenced by those drawings, very simple line drawings, and section perspective. Obviously, it is influenced by the Paul Rudolph's Yale School of Architecture. So Paul Rudolph shows his building by this big section perspective with many shadows and lights and depths of the space, and I'm very interested in these drawings as well. And also the public drawings with many details of the behaviors and also physical setting. I'm inspired by Piranesi's etching, the drawings of Rome, ancient Rome, because this series of etching drawing is not just the document of what he saw at that moment in Rome, but it's also mixing together with his illusions to describe, to represent his own idea of Rome by collecting different buildings in one place, like Veduta type of drawings of Venice by Canaletto. Those things are also quite big influence on me. And yeah, there is also Japanese paintings called which shows the life inside of the palace and outside of the palace, rakuchu, rakugai, or inside of the city and inside of the outside of the city. It's called rakuchu, rakugai Zubyobu, and then it's all drawn by Cavalier method, and with some part is hidden by golden clouds, but then there are many behaviors and livelihood are illustrated within these drawings, and then it doesn't care about, and then it shows many different seasons and time of the same place in one drawings. So different times can be accumulated in one drawings. This is also another fascinating aspect of drawing.
Hello, I've been to Japan this summer and I was very surprised by the absence of public space as a meeting place. And I wanted to know from you how Japanese people conceive public space. Is it missing to them?
Yeah, I think yes, we don't have a public space like in the sense of a Western city. So the open space in front of the church or city hall, with always very monumental institutional buildings, and then there is a cafe and people who gather and then enjoy gathering. And it's a real place for socialization. But but the Japanese public space is more time-based. For example, street one day suddenly transformed into very vibrant public space by festivals or by certain ceremonies or rituals. So, for example, this Hanami cherry blossom is also a very good example. So in many cases, people find this space under the cherry blossom as gathering space. And then this becomes a real place for socialization. But after cherry flower fell, no one gather under this tree. So it's more about time-based. So the sense of public is more about sharing the moment, rather than sharing the belief or sharing the, origins or etc. So sharing the moment is very important for Japanese society to define what is public. So actually there are public space in the city, but more time-based rather than space-based. So because why I start this behaviorology, it's also another reason why I start behaviorology, because behaviorology can explain this quality of Japanese public space.
So in your projects there are many very nice touched spaces, and all that are organized by different materials, different tectonics and all that. I wanted to know till what point the architect decided about the spaces, and at what point you got to other disciplines entered in. And by then, getting in the project with the other disciplines, how is your team actually concealed, like the team of architects?
Team of architects?
The team of work for the buildings.
Theme?
The team of people.
Chim.
Yeah.
Chim. Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting question. Yes. Yeah. Actually, architects are now demanded to design the team better than others, and this collaboration between different skills and background is quite important. But in order to do that, you need certain skill of the project. So for the small project like houses and intervening into the public space, I think scale-wise it's very small. So it's very difficult to invite people from outside, from our team, into our team. Of course, I work together with a structural engineer, lighting designer, sometimes Japanese paper craftsmen, and a very skillful plaster render, and timber forest, yes, timber milling factory owners. And these people are quite close to me to work together. But I'm trying to avoid working together with famous textile designer and lighting designer who already work with Toyo Ito, Sejima, all those things, because then the production of our work become very similar to them. So we try to keep distance from them. Of course, I am good friends of them, but I don't want to work with them. Yeah.
I have a question. First of all, I would like to. I really like your sweater tonight, and the question is about the windows. I would like to say that windows is a really important element in architecture, but in Asian culture, in Asian philosophy, Asian Oriental architecture, traditional architecture, the notion of window barely exists. Because I think that in Asian cultures, in order to find the ultimate truth, one might look into himself to find the truth. But in contrary, in Occidental culture, they need windows because they have to look outside to find the truth. But let's look at the scene of Japanese contemporary architecture. We see that the window plays really an important role in architecture, and you yourself, you show a really interest in windows, and I would like to ask, what has changed since then, and why do you really interested so much in windows?
Thank you. It's by intuition, because from the beginning I'm not so much a big fan of Mies van der Rohe, which tried to band the idea of window. So replacing the wall into glass wall, which doesn't need any openings, and in the visual sense. So if you limit the role of a window, just having the kind of view towards outside, or the visual connection between inside and outside, this fixed glass wall is good enough and beautiful. Yeah? Of course, ventilation, etc. There are another role in the window, and it can be replaced by the machine, for example, in the skyscraper. No? But I'm not so much interested in this banning or kind of resolving the ideas of the windows, Because the window is, I see more fertile background and details and empirical quality with windows rather than in compared to the glass wall. So this is a very from the beginning. So I try to avoid making a totally transparent building from the beginning. And then gradually I start realize that there is ecology, or kind of design ecology, or kind of windows. So yes, I think window is part of the wall, and window is okay, part of the elevation. It's also produce kind of streetscape, but at the same time there is another layer, another level, which is set of windows in one building. So, for example, okay, this house has 12 windows, and then what is the system which differ all these 12 windows, or which system which makes them consistent? Also with certain differences within them. And then this kind of system of identification and differentiation among windows becomes very interesting for me. And then please look at the project by building architecture by Gunnar Asplund. Asplund is a genius to play with this system of identification and differentiation of the set of windows in one building. And then this system is not only dedicated for one building, but it can also shake hands with neighbors and next buildings and streetscapes and the urban landscape. So I think this is a very important, achievement by the designing windows.